Hello and welcome to this episode of the Aspire Advantage series. I'm Kristie Anders. I'm your host. I'm the Program Operations Director for Aspire, which is the Continuing Education Center at Loyola University, Maryland. And today I have with me Agnes Kibirige from the tech industry, and she works specifically in AI for systems and process improvement. So Agnes, thank you so much for joining us today. We're excited to have this conversation with you. So can you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about you, your job, and your industry.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. So my name is Agnes Kibirige, as you mentioned. I'm an IT consultant. I have been in the IT/tech space my whole career, which is 20 plus years. Most of that time, I worked for big consulting companies doing CRM implementations. So basically, helping to figure out how to streamline processes and systems that people used to communicate with their customers. Um, about 5 years ago, I transitioned to my own consulting company, ExperTribe, and I focus on helping clients in the nonprofit, local government, and higher education space. What has changed since I started doing this is obviously, well, there is constant change. I go back to sort of the client server days, mainframes and client servers. And now here we are at a cusp of something new, which is AI. And so I'm doing more and more of that for my clients as well.
Thank you. Can you tell us, what do you love about, any of those pieces that you just described and the work that you do?
So I love problem solving, and I also love building things. And actually, when I was trying to decide what I wanted to be when I grew up, one of the things I was thinking about being was an architect, right? And you might not think that it connects. Then I scaled it down to I wanted to design parts of cars. So I actually went to University for Manufacturing Engineering. Um, um, uh, the thing that ties this all together is I'm building solutions, but in software, and
Mm,
ultimately figuring out how to move data to the right places so people can make decisions or complete the work that they're doing. And I
mm,
love it.
yeah.
It's always changing. I'm always learning. There's always things to learn both from my clients and from the technology space and figuring out how to bring all of that together.
Interesting. Yeah, I love that journey that you just shared and how, like you said, maybe initially there might be some people going, what's the connection here? But those skills that you identified up front that you love to do make sense in all those areas. So I can appreciate that for sure. So as you think about, IT and the tech industry and all these things that you mentioned with AI, what are some key challenges or disruptions that professionals in your industry are experiencing?
I think the thing for me is the pace of change. It's both exhilarating and daunting. And so, and we're seeming to be at the start of a new frontier. However, we've been at this point before and things fizzled out, or didn't go quite as fast as we thought. I'm thinking specifically about blockchain and how that was going to revolutionize a lot of stuff. Now, it might still, but it ended up not being as fast as we thought. So here we are again. But we are seeing a lot of applications. And so this feels like it really will change what we do. It's already starting to disrupt certain industries and create opportunities for others. So yes, I'm hoping I answered your question.
Yeah. No, I think that it's interesting. Even when you said we've been here before, I don't know why my brain first went to, oh, the space race. Like
Right.
getting to space was going to just revolutionize. And so I think, identifying that there are moments in our history where we're on this precipice of something going, we know this could have an impact. And I think, the space race or blockchain, there's lots of times when we kind of are on the edge of our seats as a human race going, what does this next step look for us, and like how does it look, and what are our reactions to it? And there's going to be people that are embracing it, there's people that will be resisting it, but I think your point of we have a lot of opportunity, And as far as that pace is a disruptor, but we've been here. Like, it's not like, as much as we think all this technology is new, we've been on the edge of big advances in the past, and we've survived. Because I think sometimes that's the perception. Will we survive this next phase? And so I don't know if that is something that that kind of question, do you hear that a lot as you talk to clients? Is there that anxiety around what is this next phase, and will we survive it?
Really interesting. I was actually having a conversation with someone this morning, and they were trying to figure out what does it mean for people's jobs, right? Because the biggest fear is this technology is going to become so clever that it can replace us. And so we went back and forth, and my thing was whatever we're doing is in service to us. So I'm working with another client, and we're focusing on how they can bring AI into their organization to help them innovate. And this led to another discussion around innovation versus transformation. So transformation is quite disruptive. I have to come into your organization and I have to substantially transform what you're doing. The inference being that what you're doing is wrong or broken or inefficient, and I'm over there to help you transform it. Where innovation is creating value where there wasn't before, because you now suddenly have this thing that lets you do stuff that you couldn't do before. So think of something like Uber, right? We had cars, we had taxis, people got in taxis and got from A to B. The introduction of technology just changed the paradigm, right? We still have people driving cars, we're still getting from A to B, but now it's more seamlessly integrated into my life. They're able to do it at scale more efficiently than we could before, right? But ultimately, they're still transporting people from A to B. So as I think about AI, first of all, it's been around for a while. We've been automating more and more of what we do. The way we interface with technology and software has also changed. Echo, Alexa, Siri, right? You can now talk and it turns into text. So this stuff has been happening. I think the thing that people are scared and excited about is this artificial general intelligence, which they believe could approximate to human intelligence or beyond. And then what is the point of humans? And what happens to people's jobs? Where my mind goes is, to the Uber example, and you can think of the Industrial Revolution and the invention of cars when people were driving horses. New value is going to be unlocked. And so the things that we do, we'll still do things, but there'll be different things and probably higher up in the value chain. And I think hopefully for us as humans, that means that you can really tap into and do the thing that you enjoy. And maybe push the busy work off to like an AI assistant, that keeps your calendar up to date, schedules your tasks, lets you know when you have conflicts, so you could just be purely focusing on the thing that you love to do. Mm-hmm. I'm also an optimist. They might kill us all.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I was actually having a conversation when you said it'll free us up to do the things that we love and do things of higher value. I wonder if part of that realization for people, I had a conversation with someone where he had taken a break from work and, like a little bit of a sabbatical, and said, I went to find myself and I didn't like the person I found. So I'm trying to re-find myself. And I think that some of that is we've got our technology up to this point has been so focused on efficiency and driving forward certain outcomes that I think in some ways when we get to step back and say, we're going to allow technology to do some of those things so that we can do the things that we highly value. Part of that conversation might be rediscovering our values and those things that, as humans, but also as individual people, what we love, what we value, how do we release ourselves to trust enough of AI and technology to do some of those more menial tasks that can be automated so that that frees us up for those things that we love. But I thought that was it. It just struck me. I found myself and I didn't like the person I found. So I'm trying to re-find myself. And I was like that. At some level, after, becoming a mom, I have felt that in the past. I had to go through that a little bit, that process myself. So as we think about the future then, what emerging technologies or innovations, I know you've kind of used that word innovation versus transformation already, what do you believe will shape the future of your industry in the next, I'm going to say 5 to 10 years, pardon me, but if it's hard to look that far forward, and you want to answer, maybe even 2 to 3 years, what does kind of the future look like for your industry?
So I'll talk about my industry and then I'll talk about some interesting things that I've seen around the place. I think for my industry, me specifically, it's being able to combine everything I know and I've learned through my career with everything that's emerging and understanding my clients. So again, I'm in the middle of all of these things and I'm trying to help clients make decisions, innovate and push themselves forward. What would have been a challenge for a small business owner like me before was tapping into that knowledge and being up to date on what was going on, right? And being able to do that in a way that was relevant to my clients. What I'm most excited about, therefore, is the ability for me to be able to use a generative AI agent, something like a chat GPT, to get a download of that information almost in real time, right? And being able to combine that with what I know, being able to go back and forth and learn the pieces that I need to learn in a way that makes sense to me so that I can then use that to have intelligent conversations and not steer, but guide my clients, right? So, I've heard and as I absorb this, that you will be able to run, you know, large revenue organizations with fewer people, right? Scaling that down to me, um, you know, $1 million a year, $1 million revenue, solopreneurs, right? So I don't need a market research person. I can get some AI agent to help me with my calendar, so that in 5 or 10 minutes, I can get ready to meet a client, where might have taken me a couple of hours or a day before, right? So I can be focused on clients and I can find the information I need and digest it much quicker than I did before to be even more productive than I've ever been, right? So I think the disruption is it's exciting for startups and organizations that are just starting because the building blocks have changed, or you can introduce things into the building blocks of your organization that make you even more efficient than you could have before. On the flip, if you do have a big organization and lots of people and some of these tasks are being done by people, then I think your challenge is figuring out what to shift those people's attention to, right? As you start to automate some of these lower value activities. The way I'm thinking about it right now is a smaller company like myself is able to be much more nimble as long as you're taking advantage of the technology, really figuring out how it applies to you and making the changes and the innovation that you need to keep you relevant and up to date.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it sounds like some of the things that as people maybe start to fear or have questions about, oh, AI is going to take jobs. Again, you said you're an optimist, so that's an opportunity of, how do we then maximize the efficiency? And I think the industries that you identified at the beginning of this interview that you work with, you mentioned nonprofits, higher education, government, I think could really benefit from those opportunities and from saying, how do we maximize the service that we're able to do through the technology components that we're bringing in? And so it's an increase in capacity that, and I love that you said, how do we redirect those people's attention or redirect their efforts into something that's more meaningful? It's not AI is going to take over every single human job and we're going to be twiddling our thumbs under as, AI slaves, as some people I think foresee the future, but it's we get to do more meaningful things, and more things that bring value to us and to our organizations, whatever other industry that falls into. And so I love that as a reframe.
And I do have an additional, so you were asking about where is it going in the next 5 years and what could possibly happen in the future. I went to a conference. It was at the National Physics Lab, and they had one of those Boston Scientific robots that looks like a dog, and they were training it with AI. And it could listen and react to voice commands, you know, or like someone could type and it could essentially respond to what it was doing. And it was quite fascinating to see. Like it danced with the guy, it sat down, it stood up. But some of the applications are like, for example, military reconnaissance, clearing minefields. But it's also scary, right? An army of robot dogs that don't feel pain, right? That are controlled from far away, right? So, uh, if you took that, you could get very scared if you took that to, some of these scary places and bad actors. But on the flip side, you could clear, minefields much easier without people having to, lose limbs or life, right? So there's always two sides to it. And even in where we are right now, countries are still figuring out their regulation. There is a bit of an AI race on, and again, it's big players that are, sucking up vast quantities of data. Some of our own data is being sucked up. And if this is going to shape the future, then we really all need to figure out how to be part of the conversation, right? If decisions are going to be made with data that's being collected now, then you want to be part of that data. I know I do. And I might not always be represented in that data, right? So what will that mean for someone like me in the future, right? Or future generations, if this is indeed the tipping point, or if we're on the cusp of something, right? How do we make sure that we learn from some of the things that have come before, some of the stuff that people say about social media now, if we had known? And so how do we not repeat that with AI, especially where regulations are fluid? It's a bit of a Wild West moment, right? And so I guess that's some of the things that are scary, like who is in charge, who's setting the rules, right? And when all is said and done and we're into this next phase, will we look back at now and wish we had been more clear about certain things, wish we had used different data, wish we had maybe told people or yeah, I think some people know more than others. Decisions are being made by some and not others. So we're in a bit of a gray area now that could really shape the future. And I think more of us need to be part of the discussion, and more of us need to therefore be aware of what's going on.
Yeah, so there's definitely an appropriate amount of caution as we look at the future. As much as there's ample opportunity, some of those regulations and how data is being used, who's included in those data sets, even if you're not a person that is excited about all those opportunities, that conversation and being involved and allowing lots of voices to be heard, sounds like that's going to be really valuable over the next year, so that we can avoid some of those potential things that you just identified 5-10 years down the road. And not that we'll do that flawlessly, but I think that's a good charge to anyone who's listening, is find those conversations and be willing to have those. I know even we have dinner with my extended family Sunday afternoons, and those are some of the conversations we've started having. And I think sometimes those, it's not that they don't feel meaningful, but I think because we know each other really well, sometimes it's like, well, we're not going to do anything with this conversation. But allowing the people that we trust to be the people that we kind of chew on those ideas, and then we get in other circles and we can continue to say, how do we do this sustainably? How do we do this ethically? How do we care for people, the environment, the earth, as we have these conversations? I'm realizing that those conversations that we have, even in a scenario like this conversation might not feel like it's going to change anything, but it opens up the ideas so that the conversations across the globe can happen more naturally, and we feel more comfortable with, well, I had this thought. What do you think about this? And so I think that getting involved in those conversations sounds great. Is there a way that, as you think about having those conversations, is there a way that you would encourage people to get involved? Are there forums? Are there groups? I want to stay away from politics, but are there any kind of people or organizations maybe that are having this conversation well at a high level that we can be paying attention to? Does that make sense?
That is a really good question, and that is an answer I'm searching for myself. Um, I'm part of a couple of groups that are emerging within sort of Baltimore, the Baltimore tech scene. But as you were talking, I'm going to change the subject just a bit. As you were talking, also just news, podcasts, and that's how I get to find out about events like the robot dog one that I went to and be part of that discussion. But as you were talking, I couldn't help thinking about the latest, one of the latest scandals, situations with ChatGPT. I don't know if you heard about it. The one of the latest models is a bit sycophantic. So no matter what you do, it praises you and you're so fantastic and oh my God, right?
What a great idea.
What a great idea, even if it isn't. And actually this feedback did come from people that were using it on Reddit forums and places like that, because OpenAI, well, all of these companies are in the process of evolving their platforms and wanting to tailor their platforms to us so that we become more addicted to them and start using them. And one of the things that they're finding is we like positive reinforcement and we like happy joyfulness. It does make you feel good, right? When everything you do, someone is saying, oh my God, that is great. You are so clever. You are so intelligent. But on the flip side, and thankfully we found it out, what one of the Reddit forums, what one of the people in the forums did was used AI to change people's opinions, right? Because, that positive reinforcement, that sycophantism, plus injecting different information into the conversation, right? It can be quite dangerous, right? And if social media led us down rabbit holes, can you imagine an AI that knows you, understands everything about you, knows how to praise you, if that was injected with someone's biases to lead you down a certain path, right? I'm excited that this conversation is happening, and I'm excited that OpenAI acknowledged and is now changing their model. So being aware of that. And I think maybe we have to have another podcast because you're challenging me, right? I have all these ideas and all of these conversations, but where are they going, right? How do I get into those places where at least to know what's happening and figure out how to advise people and how to adapt myself, but also, getting to a place where I can be part of the conversations. And as I spoke, so there is there's a couple of platforms, including the lady that wrote the book Coded Bias, Joy Bulamwini. I follow her on Facebook, and some of the things that she goes to seem to be places that you would want to be, someone like me anyway. So it's finding those forums and challenging yourself, right? And I think now we're in a place where we're learning, and we have the ability, once we have these questions in our head, to use a powerful tool to refine our thinking, all right, to find those places where other people are thinking the same thing, and to be part of those. So I'd say right now it's organic, but you have challenged me to think through how it can be more formalized, right? So it gets out of our living rooms and our heads, right? And becomes part of, the hive mind, which is AI that's going to run our lives in the future.
It sounds like, maybe a first step for people is to identify, some experts that are well credentialed, well trusted, and follow those people, but also look at where they're going and where they're showing up. And that can be kind of a first step of this person, attended, I follow Brene Brown to look at like inspirational things and like challenge myself. But, I'm sure there's people in the tech and AI industry who are already speaking out, and to identify people that are trusted and kind of follow their journey is maybe a first step for now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Are there skills that are becoming essential to stay competitive in your industry as it changes, but also, I think part of what you've already mentioned is this is affecting every single person. And so as much as it's your industry and there's going to be skills for your industry, maybe this is a two-part question. What are skills for your industry? And then how does the normal person, what are the kinds of skills that as we have these conversations, we should also be developing? So I don't know if you can maybe answer the first one, people in AI and tech, what are the skills that they need? And then what does the normal person need in order to have the conversations and keep up?
Good question. So thinking about myself and the work that I do and have historically done, it's building software solutions, like systems for clients. And I've done it at a large scale and a small scale. And before, there would be developers that wrote the code, that tested the code, right? And you put it in front of the client, and then you supported it, right? So you needed people to actually write the code. And more, we're getting to a stage where a lot of these tools can write code. Claude is a pretty good coder, right? In the code that actually runs them. So there's obviously the people that are developing the platforms and developing the AI apps. And so if you wanted to go deep AI, you still do need to understand things like Python and some of that code behind the scenes. But someone in my field that is helping clients integrate their data, think through how they store customer data, how they access it, and how they use it to improve their interactions with customers. More and more, I'm needing less code, right? And I can use these tools to help me write code, write SQL, build databases, all of that stuff. Microsoft Copilot is, going from strength to strength, and you can use speech commands to, build your systems. The reason I'm still needed and the skills that I look for is it doesn't always hang together very well, right? And you do still need someone with a strategic lens to help you think through, that there's certain questions that you need to ask. How are you going to scale, some of the implications that we were talking about? And with these tools, because it's so attractive, you can dive in and build something in no time at all. But you really haven't thought about the implications of security, intellectual property, um, scaling it, right? It might work for 10 users, but when you get to 100, because everyone loves it, it might not work, right? So there is still the strategy behind sewing all of these tools together. So it makes sense both now and in the future. And so I guess what we had talked about earlier was that we're moving up the value chain. And so in my industry, some of those lower level tasks, like writing the code, like, listening to taking meeting minutes, right? Rereading those meeting minutes to figure out what were the requirements that people had, what tasks do we need to perform, and keeping track of all of that. That I can now like automate or semi-automate using AI, but I still need people to orchestrate everything for me, right? Um, and by orchestrate, I mean making sure that everything plays together correctly and that there is some recognition of some of the future pitfalls that we might not be thinking about now, so that we can build systems that that are robust and can withstand, both our requirements now and what's coming in the future. So for me, I would look for someone who, and this sounds really cliched, a critical thinker, right? But someone who likes to think, who likes to think, someone who has a thirst for learning.
Yeah.
And is questioning, has a questioning mind, um, and isn't scared of technology, right? Practically, that means I would still go after a developer, but I would go after a developer who understands code and how it works, but is curious about the problems that are being fixed by that code and isn't just coding for code's sake, right? It's not someone that's waiting to be told what to code and then coding that, but someone that's trying to understand the reasons behind the coding, because they could get AI to do the coding, but you still need a human being to make sure that it's applied appropriately, and it can scale.
Hmm.
I don't, hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, I think it sounds like there's still essential technical skills. We've had kind of this classification of hard and soft skills for a while. But, I've heard that maybe those categories are changing from hard skills to technical skills, and soft skills are more durable skills. So I think even as we think about skills, our classifications of skills are evolving. But it sounds like the technical skills are still needed, even if AI can do some of them, because there's a level of discernment that's required. And I think that's one thing that I'm noticing in a lot of these interviews that we're doing is that the ability to evaluate the outputs of technology is still so crucial. And then the ability to have those higher level conversations where you're thinking critically and problem solving and you're communicating well with others. I think are feeling, I don't want to say highlighted, but we're noticing the impact when those softer, durable skills aren't there. And so it doesn't sound like there's anything that's like shocking in your answer. Like, yeah, we have to have people that understand the technical components, even if AI can do it. But we also have to have those curious, lifelong learners. Why is it doing that? Why am I getting the same thing when I thought I fixed that problem this way? Because there's so many solutions, there's so many parts to solutions now. And even as I think, you're a systems person, that there could be multiple good options. So how do we evaluate and get to the best option? Or even at least maybe not the absolute best, but something that not only ticks our technical boxes, but also is scalable and ethical and cares for the people that are within the system. And so like the ability to put those things together sounds like it's crucial for people in the tech industry right now to have that discernment and the ability to evaluate not only what's the problem, but how do we get to a solution that works with the technology, but works for the people that are using it.
Even though I said before, right, that we need developers less and less, there's a couple of caveats. What I have found is my knowledge helps prevent me from going down over-engineered solutions and rabbit holes. It will give you something that will work, but might add 3 or 4 additional steps that you don't need, and ultimately build you a less efficient piece of code. So you do still need someone now to review the code and make sure it makes sense end to end, right? Um, an example I was thinking about is I'm working with someone now who they they are more of a business analyst and they have a really good relationship with a client of theirs. And in conversations, realized that the client needed some sort of technical solution to plug a gap in their organization. And they were able to go to some of these tools and come up with a solution. And it suggested the tools, step by step how to configure it, and everything like that, right? Which you would think would be a threat to someone like me, because before you would call me, I would come in, I'd help you pick the tool, etc. But as I'm peeling back the layers on this, um, it would potentially work and to a point. So the things that haven't been considered are how many users are going to use this tool, how many records are you going to collect over time, right? How do you keep the tool secure? And back to my original conversation, um, you pick a product, but there's many good products, and it is reacting to what you're telling it, right? So have you used the right criteria to select that product? And do your criteria include both current and future requirements and how that thing is going to scale? That's one thing. And two, is your code written in the most optimal way, or have you overcomplicated the solution? So for that person, my caution was you could very quickly get in trouble. And by the time you do get in trouble, you've built something that people are using, that people are relying on, that has all of this data, right? And it's harder to untangle. So in that instance, you're not replacing me as an IT consultant, just like I can't replace a developer, right? Because you still need someone with the experience of the tools to be able to point out some of the things that I was mentioning. But now the tool gives you just enough to be dangerous, to go off and build something, right? And start using it, which had been a problem before, but now that is magnified
Mm-hmm.
at scale.
Yeah.
Um, and especially, I don't know if we talked about the sycophantic AI. As you do it, it's making you feel like you're the king of the world. Like, oh, I've just turned you into a rock star IT consultant. You can go off and you can build this thing on your own, right? So, cautionary tale, right? It gives you what you need based on the questions you ask, but you don't know what you don't know, and neither does it because it doesn't know. You know what I mean? So if you don't know what you don't know, right, and it's you're in an echo chamber where your it's reinforcing your feeling that you know everything, then you could get yourself in trouble, right? And I think of that even in the perspective of contracts and legal documents. It's very easy to use AI to write them, but you're not a lawyer, so you don't know what you're missing, right?
Mm-hmm.
You just know what you want in this situation. So I think for easy things, yeah, definitely AI. But as you're starting to talk about more complicated solutions or more complicated applications, you do still need someone that knows that field to
Mm-hmm.
just make sure that you're doing the right thing.
Yeah. That was one thing when we had our conversation for the Aspire Advantage series on digital marketing. We noted that there's a lot of tools out there that, Canva, lots of different things that people can now create graphics in a whole new way than they used to be able to. And as helpful as that is, they're not necessarily informed on the best practices around those graphics, how to make them accessible, visual design principles. And so it gives that false sense of confidence. And then we have a lot of things happening in the world of, digital marketing or design. And it's good that it's accessible to more people. But at the same time, you don't know what you don't know. And so I guess that maybe that's part of my second question of, for normal people, and I use the word normal very loosely, for people who aren't embedded in the tech or the AI industry, what are some skills that we can be thinking about, we can be cultivating and saying, I'm never going to write Python code and I'm never going to understand this high level systems stuff that you're talking about, but AI is going to impact my life in some way, shape, or form. It already has. What are some personal skills, some technical skills that I can be working on? Again, that normal person is anybody that's not embedded in that industry.
I would definitely say get your hands on one of the AI platforms out there, the free platforms. I know OpenAI has a free version, Claude has a free version, Gemini, and think about ways that it can improve your job, right? And I say that because whatever job you're doing, someone else has figured out how to get AI to streamline it and do it faster, right? And so if you are both showing up to do the same task and they are using AI and you are not, back to my example before, it's taking them 2 minutes to do a thing that could be taking you 2 hours or more, right? And so over time, that person that's using AI is just going to get that much further ahead. Um, so, I mean, if we're looking for an analogy, when imagine if when cars were invented, everyone else got a car and could now travel to New York or Delaware or wherever in much less time, and you insisted on still being on a horse, right? By the time you get to Delaware, they've been there and back and they're on to the next thing. You know what I'm saying? You still get there, right? But surely it would be much better for you to get a car and get there quicker and not get left behind than still insisting on going on your horse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it sounds like there's, maybe practically within that, there's a just start somewhere. Is part of the, if you're not embedded, start asking the questions, get a free trial, play around with it. And maybe part of that is, the comfortability or the resilience that comes along with saying, okay, I'm going to try. And so that resilience skill is going to be really helpful as we continue to try that. But then technically, how to ask good questions, because as you start to ask any kind of AI a question and you get an answer, if you're thinking about, well, that's not the answer that I expected, so maybe I need to change the question, and you try lots of different questions and you watch as those answers come back, you start to learn, even if it's judge my outfit for the day, like those kinds of things where you put in a picture or you say, give me an inspirational quote. Like there's lots of little things that you're not necessarily learning you can learn the thing that you're asking AI, but what you're really doing is learning how to use AI, and you're learning how to prompt it, and you're learning how to change your responses. And I mean, I've had lots of back and forth with AI where I've started with an initial prompt and then I get an answer and I'm like, that was not what I was expecting. So maybe I need to change in this way. Maybe I can add this phrase to help clarify a piece of the context that's necessary. Or I can say, oh, I didn't realize I needed a number limit, or I needed to say, I just asked it a question and I really wanted a 15 words or less answer, and I didn't specify that. And so, as I've been learning, my own journey with AI, is I had to get over that initial fear. But then also the learning, I'm not just learning the stuff AI is telling me about, I'm also learning how to use it better in every single iteration of those questions in that journey. And so I guess I'm just asking, is that part of it? That back and forth creates a learning for it, but also for me in how to use it better.
It creates a learning for you in how to use it better, right? And how to frame your next question so you don't have too many back and forths on what you're trying to tell it to do. I think for me, it helps me know what I don't know, if that makes sense. So I could ask the question, and then one of the answers I get back leads me to another question. So there's times, I guess, when you're creating AI to run autonomously, that you need to get the prompt right the first time, so it always does the right thing the first time. Um, but I find my most useful interactions with AI are going back and forth, right? And for me, I have several different AI like GPTs and agents that I use for different things. Um, so I have one that's an expert AI a trainer, right? And you can supercharge your prompt, right? You can actually use an AI agent like AI to help you write a prompt that you then program into a GPT, right? So by virtue of the fact that it's programmed to be an expert in the thing that I need it to do, it already knows more than me, right? And so as I'm asking it to do stuff, I'm leaving enough room for it to tell me the stuff that I don't know, right? And so it's always a conversation. It's like if you had a AI expert over here and you're about to meet a client that does X, and you had that expert and you could ask them, what kinds of things can I talk to my client about, right? Some of the stuff, right? The client, their processes, right? Or you, right? You know what you do in your job, the things that are your pain points, etc. But now you have access to this tool that knows everything that's been written about your job, knows, things that people have done successfully, knows the pitfalls that people have fallen in. And you're just trying to figure out how to get the pieces of that information that are relevant to your situation right now, right? That can answer your question, but also improve you and what you're doing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. So I mean, sounds like there is a level of that back and forth that is beneficial for people at all levels. But at some point, you get to a point where you may need to know enough to get it right the first time. But there's going to be some people that they don't need to feel that pressure. And I guess I'm trying to differentiate
Yes.
at your level,
Oh,
you've been
okay.
able to
Okay.
identify you have the discernment to know if I'm automating something, I want to get it right at this level. For people like me, that back and forth, and like there doesn't need to be the pressure to get the prompt right on the first time.
Right.
Yeah.
But you need a good prompt so it doesn't go off into left field, right?
Right.
So I know what I have in my fridge, and I know the kinds of foods that I want to eat, and I know my budget, right? I want to put that into my AI agent so that it can look around my neighborhood, find where the cheapest ingredients are, combine that with what's in my fridge, and give me recipes. Not only give me recipes for the week, but tell me what I need to buy. Or go populate my Instagram cart with all of the stuff that I need to buy um, within my budget so that there's no waste at the end of the week because you've combined it with what's in my fridge and you know what I need to buy to do the
Hmm.
recipe.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Stuff like that enhances my life a lot more than, if I had to remember what was in my fridge when I went to the grocery store and then I had to remember what I'm trying to cook. And then, you know what I mean? You could even now literally take a picture of what's in your fridge, like lay the stuff out so you don't actually have to type it out. Take pictures of it, say, hey, this is everything I have, right? This is how many people I have to feed. This is roughly my budget. Could you do an Instacart order for me and tell me what the recipes are?
Hmm.
Like that's the kind of stuff that you can now do.
Yeah.
So it's taking what you want to do, it's taking what you have and what you know, combining it with what it knows, and coming to you with a thing that's really valuable.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
I can
And if you
hear my
it's gonna
husband's voice in my
yeah,
head going, Kristie, we have 15 cans of tuna. I think you can stop buying tuna.
right, right. Or on the flip, what can I do with this tuna? I have
Right.
tuna, right? That we're not eating. Like, how do I get down to 10 cans by next week? So, but if you take that example then into your job, um, and now you can see how it can enhance what you're doing. Um, and yeah, you can have a conversation with it about tuna. I keep buying tuna. I need to stop. But I have all of this tuna. What do I do with it? And you would be surprised.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that's very interesting. And I think that um, there's lots of times I think we don't understand the full capacity even of AI. And so I think that start small is important for people not embedded in the industry, and having those, what are those menial things that I can convert to some, AI tasks, but just that first step of get a free account from somewhere, start asking questions. And that ability to just start somewhere, start small, allow that learning process to happen, I think is a good place. It's a good step for a lot of people. Um, as you think about all these skills, are there any skills that were previously critical in the IT technology AI space that are becoming less relevant in today's landscape?
Hmm. Um, so we talked about the example of uh, coding. I think um, some degree of coding is going to be automated more and more. Um, there's also, you had a business analyst who, came to meetings, took the meeting notes. then, wrote the requirements or did the tasks. We now have, these note taker apps that are able to do that. So it's it's weird. It's the sort of entry level, repetitive manual stuff, right? Helping you think through a social media post, for example. Uh, so what's becoming less and less critical is the stuff that can be automated, right? So if all you did was take in someone's content and turn it into a beautiful picture, or um, took handwritten notes and then typed them into like a document, if that's all you ever did, then that's not critical anymore. But I'm hoping that that's not all you did,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so you're able to enhance your job. So the optimist in me says, as an entry level person, before I would have to assign you to take those meeting notes and sit in the meeting with me until you got to a point where you had done enough meetings and been in enough, with enough clients that you could then delegate that to someone else so that you could start doing some of the more experienced tasks, some of the more involved tasks. Um, but now on day one, you have someone to do the notes, right? So it's a challenge for me to figure out how to get AI um, to empower the people that work in my organization to do those higher level things, right? So because they're now able to do more
Mm-hmm.
and learn quicker. Um, I don't, as you can tell, I don't have an answer to this question. I keep toying with it. I don't have an answer to the question.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing is completely gone,
Mm-hmm.
but it is greatly improved,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
right? So you probably do still need developers to write code, but you have a thing that can um, test that code and find all the bugs really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
On the flip side, they can use the thing to write the code, a bulk of the code, and then implement it and then see where it's broken and fix that instead of having to write it from scratch.
Yeah.
So what is no longer needed is the really like repetitive menial stuff that used to give the entry level person, you know, the entry level person, like in the days of mail before email, they were the ones running around taking this note from this desk to that desk so that the person could know what was happening. And then email came. You didn't, it's not like you got rid of that person. They just went and did something different.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess it's figuring out what that is. And I'll say my area of expertise isn't that. I'm sure there's HR companies that have figured it out and some of these, bigger consulting companies. But from my lens, I now have tools that can do a lot of this stuff for me. So I don't need to bring someone in to do just that. But I'm getting to a point where I need someone to come in and help me orchestrate all of the tools that help me do my day to day. And someone that I can bring into clients as I get more clients um, that can very quickly come up to speed with what I've done so far and take the reins and keep going. Much easier than I'd be able to do it before.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like there's not necessarily any particular skills that are no longer critical, but there may be less people required to do those things because a good chunk of that task can be automated, but there still needs to be someone overseeing and ensuring quality on the task. And so it's not that the skill itself is gone, but we might need less actual people to be monitoring the work.
That's am I answering your questions, by the way?
Yeah.
I hope so.
Yeah. So as people are interested in getting into IT or, some kind of AI or, the tech industry, how can they potentially enter this field? How can they prepare themselves to enter the field, but also to meet some of these, as we've talked about the future, some of the things that are changing or the If someone's especially, in high school thinking, I want to get into tech, how do people entering the field do that?
Interesting. So it's been a while since I've been in high school. Um, I was at an event yesterday and I met a couple of people. They work with Howard County and they have an apprenticeship program. And what they do is they get kids in high school or early in their career that are interested in becoming more involved in tech. And they pay some of that person's salary to an employer like me and get them certified and hands-on at the same time so that by the time they're done with the certification, they've actually used it and applied it in a real life situation, right? And this is to bridge the gap between there's people with certifications that don't have jobs, and then there's people like me that need experienced people, right? And so there's an incentive for me to then bring those people into my organization. And those people get a chance to learn. So the salary is not so high, but as you are learning, you're being paid, and you're doing an actual job. So that's one thing I've seen that is really valuable. I also I partner with an organization called Consult Lemonade, also interestingly in Howard County. And what they do is they help people reskill or level up their tech skills. So again, through workshops, online learning forums, interviews, and ultimately they're a staff augmentation company, you might say, but they're a nonprofit, and their goal is to put people in jobs where they can grow and flourish. So they do some of that groundwork that I was telling you, getting them up to speed, teaching them the soft skills, so that they're ready to come into organizations. I say organizations, it will be, it's aspirational. Companies like mine, right, or others that need tech skills and actually hit the ground running, right? So there's that. Reflecting on my career, I didn't know I was going to end up in tech. Remember the architect and then the automotive industry. And I actually did manufacturing engineering. Then I ended up in the Ford IT department and it took off from there. So my journey wasn't linear. And so I think that's the thing. But it's finding that thing that you're passionate about. And so I was having this conversation with someone as well. Um, Tech is a huge area and it applies to so many things. I don't think it's possible to be a quote unquote tech generalist. So you have to pick a thing. Is it the databases? Is it the data and how it moves around? Is it the user interface and how people interact with that data? Is it the use of those two things in a specific industry, right? There has to be a thread that you pull at because then that will lead you to the forums and the people and the training that get you to become more skilled in that area, right? But the thing that will stand out about you when you're at job fairs or places where your employers are is that you're passionate about something and you can talk about it and think critically about it, right? So if you're just out there thinking, oh, I need a tech job, so let me go find tech, it's going to be harder than I'm interested in robotics, right? And how it applies to the robot dog that learns how to speak commands, right? I want to go pull at that thread and really understand how it's done and go meet those people. Right? I think that's how you end up, building a career, right? So you have to find that initial thing that gets you excited that you want to learn more about and then become that thing.
Yeah. So it
Yeah.
sounds like internships.
Pick a relevant thing.
Yeah. Sounds like some kind of internship and a specialization maybe are two kinds of key points that, a good way to get into tech is some kind of internship or job shadow or, connection to some of those resources and organizations that you mentioned that help make those connections between people wanting to get into tech and people that need people in their organizations, but then also some kind of, specialty. And it's interesting that, you mentioned your journey wasn't linear. The people that I have talked to recently, in cybersecurity have said a very similar thing, that, a lot of the people in cybersecurity, they were in a group setting with other professionals, and they all said, we started another way and kind of ended up in cybersecurity. And so as we're trying to advise college students on what does it take to get into cybersecurity, we all had very non-traditional pathways. And so, we're trying to think through what are the good entry points, that we can provide, and the guidance that we can give students. And so I do think that, again, that specialization, or that find the thing that you enjoy or you're passionate about, makes a lot of sense. Because when you are passionate, I don't want to say that journey shows itself, but I think it's a lot easier to follow than having such a large, broad umbrella
Right.
that you're trying to get into.
Right.
And that can be very tricky.
And if you don't know what you're passionate about, the other thing I'll say is exposure, right? Go to the conferences or the forums. Basically, get out of behind your computer and go and start meeting people that are talking about technology, are doing interesting things with technology. We're actually in a really good part of the country where we have so many colleges and universities and free events that you can go to, right? Go see a robot dog take commands of someone, and get out there and get exposure, and then one of those things is going to spark your interest. And it's not like a finite journey. Like, my journey still continues, right? And it's not a definitive thing. The robot dog might lead you to I don't know, a coffee cup that heats itself. I don't know, I'm just making this up, right? And it might lead you to something else that then you eventually are doing something that wasn't even dreamed of 5 years ago, right? But the point is to be where things are happening, so that one of those things hopefully sparks your interest, or you meet someone that sees something in you, and the rest is history.
Yeah, yeah. So here's our last question. What role do you see continuing education and upskilling playing in maintaining a competitive edge in your industry?
There's definitely a place for it, yes, because of the pace of change, right? I think there's a place for continue for uh, what was the word I was going to use? Traditional, I guess, education. But the time frames are so long that in that time, like, imagine a 4 year degree, right? If you're in the middle of that now, um, AI has changed multiple times, right? So even after you get that degree, which is a good foundation and you need, you're going to need to come back and dip into different things and get that exposure, right? So I don't think education stops once you have those major milestones completed. I think there's always a need to come back and refresh your skills and learn more and know more.
Mm-hmm.
And it will be very interesting to see the juxtaposition of continuing education and AI, right? So that if I'm about to embark on something new, or if I'm about to step into a promotion or something else, that I can get the download of the thing I need when I need it in a way that's relevant to me, to then help me, accelerate or go in a new direction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I even think about the role of continuing education with AI, putting some pieces together that we've been talking about. Because I think there's that question in education as an industry itself: will AI take over education? And I think that, I mean, I'm formulating this question as I'm asking it, but I think that there's that fear that we can learn so much from AI. Do we need educators? And I think it's the same thing that you were just talking about, where AI can give you a lot, but you have to have that person who's overseeing it, who is evaluating it and saying, you may have just handed me some code, but there's some problems with it still. And so that level of understanding the content itself that's coming out of AI, and the pedagogy that requires for people to learn well and to have a learning journey that's meaningful. Even as we talk about continuing education, you can learn a lot from AI. You can put in a prompt and say, I need to know about this. But as far as still having institutions that are helping to form and shape and identify the quality of that learning that's happening, I think is still very valuable. But
Yes.
yeah.
Completely agree. I was reading about the Alpha School the other day. I don't know if you've heard about that.
Mm-mm.
They use a lot of AI as part of their, I guess, learning for their students. Um, and they've been able to get the points average up, even in students that were traditionally falling behind, right? Because the beauty is you can tailor something to that student and they can try it over and over and over and over again until they get it right, which isn't always possible in a classroom.
Mm-hmm.
So, and reflecting on like some of the ways I use AI, I can change my mind 100 times and it's not going to get pissed off. Whereas if that was someone on my team, oh, try this, now try this. Oh, now that you've done that, let's go try this over here, right? So if you apply that to education, we all learn differently, we all take information in differently. And if you have a class of many people, you try and group similar styles together or similar uh, you know uh, grades or capacities together, but that isn't always possible. But maybe if they all get to the same level before they get in front of the teacher, so then it makes the teacher's job much easier because AI has got everyone to a certain level before they show up to the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
It's also probably going to help us address the issue where there's a shortage of teachers, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's definitely a good way to augment your education, like education just in general. A different way to do homework, right? So you actually learn the stuff and it knows whether you know it or not, because all it does is test you and react to what you're doing. And it doesn't get tired and it's there all the time, right? I think that's a good thing, you
Mm-hmm.
know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for this conversation today. It's been so enlightening, and I appreciate all of your thoughts and perspectives. And, we hope that the listeners are able to glean something from this conversation and go out and start a free account of something and find some good thought leaders in this space and follow their journeys and continue these conversations in meaningful ways. And so thank you so much, Agnes. We appreciate your time and that you were willing to come on this podcast. So thank you.
Thank you. I had a great time. Thank you for listening to all of my thoughts. I hope you found them valuable. And if you ever need me to come back, just let me know.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.